If you look at the first part of chapter 9 of the book of Ecclesiastes, Solomon goes back once again to talk about death and the inevitability of death. We all have to face it. And he seems to make that a recurring theme, and I thought we touched on that a good bit. So I want to change up just the style of the sermon tonight and try to be a little more encouraging with a lesson on the power of one. It still comes from Ecclesiastes chapter 9. There are about, 6 verses here that talk about this power of just one person who will use the wisdom of God and what that can mean to a community, a nation, maybe even to the world, but to that individual. And sometimes, well, maybe frequently, that person is still not respected and understood, even though they might save a city from destruction because of that wisdom. Listen to the words of Solomon, verses 13 through 18. I have also seen this example of wisdom under the sun, and it seemed great to me. Hey, here's a good bit of wisdom. Look at this. Here's a great example. There was a little city with few men in it, and a great king came against it and besieged it, building great siege works against it. But there was found in it a poor, wise man, and he by his wisdom delivered the city. Yet no one remembered that poor man. But I say that wisdom is better than might, though the poor man's wisdom is despised, and his words are not heard. The words of the wise heard and quiet are better than the shouting of a ruler among fools. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but one sinner destroys much good. Think about that. Here's a man. He's poor. He may be an introvert. He may just live on the outskirts of the city. He may not socialize much with a bunch of people, but he's got something going for him. He's got some wisdom, and he's in a time of crisis. He kind of steps up and he says, now here's how we can avoid this crisis. Here's how we can get through this, and we'll be better for it. And the city takes his suggestion, and the city survives, but yet the man is soon forgotten once again because he's maybe not the sociable type. Maybe he's an introvert. Maybe he just lives there on the outskirts of the city and really doesn't want to bother anybody, doesn't really want to be bothered by anybody. So he's not. But there are no monuments built to his honor. No one remembers that he saved the city through his wisdom. It's just kind of, he goes on his way, and the world goes on its way. Did you ever hear the story of the nail? Now, it's a little different than the one that's on the shoe of the horse. But it's a nail that felt that it was not important, got discouraged, and upset. The only thing it was doing was holding down a shingle on a roof, one part of a shingle on a roof. So because it got upset, didn't think it was very important, wasn't getting the attention it thought it should, it worked itself loose out onto the roof, down over the eave, falling over the side of the house. Nobody missed it till the wind started blowing. And the wind blew and caught that shingle just right and started working that shingle up and down until eventually the other nails couldn't handle the load by themselves, and they got loose and the shingle blew off, and then 3 or 4 other shingles blew off, and eventually there's a hole in the roof, and the rain came in, and the whole building was damaged because that one nail didn't feel that it was important. And when it removed itself, it weakened the whole structure. It's amazing how just a little bit of tape sometimes, or a staple, or a nail can strengthen something that's wobbly. shelves that we buy at Walmart, because that's what we can afford and that's what we keep around. But I noticed this. Jeremy had a set of shelves that I needed to work on so he could get some stuff done in his room, and I hadn't done it. I put it off. Finally, I got in there, and they were wobbly. And you know, on the back of those, it's just cardboard. But when I took 2 or 3 nails and nailed that cardboard back on there the way it was supposed to be, I could pick that shelf up and move it around to wherever it needed to be. It was no longer wobbly. Well, that's the way things are out in nature. We don't necessarily see it all the time and see all the evidence of it, but there it is. The nail removed itself, it weakened the structure of the whole building. That meant that every other nail in that building had to work a little bit harder to keep that building secure, and it simply couldn't do it. Changes took place that even the other nails working harder couldn't prevent the damage that was done. So we can see from this that one nail is important. And sometimes, you know, we're like the nail. Sometimes we don't feel very important. Sometimes we're made to feel like we're not very important. And we get frustrated, and we give up. And we have to realize the damage that we can do to the church, the Lord's church, simply because we don't feel like we're important and we don't have very much of a part. There isn't very much that we can do, so we don't do it. But we're like a body, and each part needs to function, and each part needs to function properly for the church to be strong, for the church to be vital, for the church to be doing the work that God has given her upon the earth. So that's the testimony of the power of one. And there's greater testimony when we look at things. Look at American history. You got a history professor here. He'll verify everything that I'm going to tell you. Thomas Jefferson was elected by one vote. One vote over Aaron Burr. And that was in the House of Representatives back when they had to do things. It was almost a test. It went to the House of Representatives. One vote. How many remember Aaron Burr? You know? Yeah, but it's like he's gone somewhere in history, except wasn't he the guy that shot Alexander Hamilton in a duel? Of course, Hamilton was brave enough or foolish enough to accept the duel. But yeah, think of how history could have been changed. Because Thomas Jefferson, you know, the architect basically of the Constitution, a great individual, yeah, history could have been changed. Rutherford B. Hayes won the presidential election of 1876 over Tilden by one vote in the Electoral College. You know, we hear a lot about the Electoral College anymore, and it's a vital part of our democratic republic. But one vote, you know, you talk about close, talk about divided nations, and of course, you know, 1876, there were still a lot of divisions from 1860s, you know, and the war between the states. Andrew Johnson, twice in May of 1868, escaped impeachment by a margin of one vote in the United States Senate. Twice. He was impeached twice, but was not convicted. Here's something you may not know. Texas was granted statehood by one vote. Now we're trying to find ways to get out. California, Oregon, and Washington were separated by one vote. In other words, became different states. And California, like Texas, in their admission to the states, was supposed to be broken up into more states as the populations gained. And haven't done that. But we can see how history could have been changed a lot, just in American history, by one vote somewhere along the line. Now, the same happens in the area of philosophy. All right? A lot of people talked about communism, and we talked about how the pilgrims practiced a very limited, so to speak, or not a very complicated form of communism that failed and had to be, they had to go to a capitalistic, we'll say, system where, hey, you own your property and you have to go out there and you have to work and you have to figure out your own way of feeding yourself, because even that small group, there wasn't enough that half of them could sit at home or play ball or whatever without them starving to death. It was just impossible. So each had to take responsibility for themselves. But by one man's theory, communism came into existence in the sense that it gained popularity on the world stage, and that's Karl Marx. Until recently, 1/3 of the world suffered under that totalitarian system. And the 1920s, historians will always remember that was the century that millions of people were killed, murdered, because of communism, to support one man's theory of how economics should work. Something we might be a little more familiar with. One woman was responsible for the Supreme Court decision to remove prayer from public schools. Well, understand that wasn't prayer that was removed. That was guided prayer, or prayers led by individuals. Listen, there's no power on this earth that can stop a person from praying anywhere that they want to, except the individual themselves. Children can pray in school, and they should. See, that's the thing. As families, we should be teaching them how to pray, and that they can pray anywhere that they need to. Think of what's going on in the colleges. My beloved Ohio State University, though I never attended there, there was a guy who rammed a car into a bunch of students and got out and was trying to hack them to death with a butcher knife. And the reason why is that he felt that he was being made fun of or hindered or whatever because of the lack of prayer rooms for Muslims. Wait a minute. The university wasn't supposed to be providing places for prayer, but here's somebody saying, I wasn't, so I'm going to kill people if I can because of it. What a strange world we live in. That our rights are taken away, and other people, whether you would agree with this statement or not, are fighting for their rights, even though that we see that their rights are impinging upon our rights. Because eventually, it's like the one woman said about the homosexual movement. She hoped she died before it became mandatory for everybody. It was a joke, okay. But it was true. She said it. It used to be, it was, it happened here and there, everywhere, and now, it's almost mandatory. If you don't, you're some kind of a racist or intolerant. Well, the power of one can also be seen in religious history, and we go to the Bible for these things. And again, the Old Testament provides many examples. And remember Romans chapter 15 and verse 4. for whatever was written in the former days was written for our instruction, that through endurance and through the encouragement of the Scriptures we might have hope. There's nothing that we're facing today that hasn't been faced by people many years ago. People in the Old Testament. You know, the devil keeps doing the same things over and over and over again. So we go to the Old Testament, we can find some things, about one. Think of it. One man's sin plunged the whole human race into a world of sin and death. Genesis chapter 3. Hey, catch how I phrased that. One man's sin did not make us sinners, but it put us, remember what God did. God drove him and the woman out of the Garden of Eden into a world of thorns and thistles and hard work and hard labor and a separation to a large degree from God. And that's what plunged us into a world of sin and death. When David, it's Psalm 51, David says, I was born into a world of sin, and sin, my mother conceived me, and blah, blah. He's talking about the world. He's not talking about being born a sinner, but we see how the false teachers have twisted that around as, we're born sinners and we got an original sin, so babies need to be baptized to get rid of that original sin. No, it's not even in the Bible, except in some of the newer versions where they've twisted the meanings of the word so much. David said, I was born in a world where sin exists, and I'm a man, and the lust of the eyes, the lust of the flesh, pride of life got to me a few times. Yeah, just like it does all of us. But God created us good. It's our choice to become sinners. And that's why Ezekiel says, what is Ezekiel chapter 15? The soul that sins, it shall die. Well, I'm not going to suffer for my father's sins. My children are not going to suffer for my sins any more than my faith will get my children to heaven. But the soul that sins, it dies. But it started when one man sinned and went from a paradise. Imagine that. Sinning in paradise and being kicked out. And that's the world that we live in, that fallen world that Adam and Eve were destined to. One man's sin. One man made the difference in a wicked world. A man by the name of Noah. Now understand, he wasn't the only righteous man. He grew up knowing his father, Lamech, his grandfather, Methuselah, and maybe, probably not though, but Enoch, the man who walked with God, was taken. Didn't die, just taken. God took him. He was such a good man. But that was the type of family he came from, and he learned how to be righteous because he was one of the sons of God, the children of Seth. But when Methuselah's taken away and Lamech is taken away, and then you have Noah kind of left there, and God gives him the instructions, hey, I'm going to destroy the world, build an ark. You know what he does? Builds the ark. In spite of all the criticism, all the persecution, people making fun of him, he does what God says to do, and then he preaches to the people. Repent! Repent! No, they don't listen to him. But he made a difference in that wicked world, and we read about it today. The estimated population of the world at that time was 25 million. Out of 25 million, 8 souls were saved physically. Okay? Wow. God gets serious at times, doesn't he? One man's faithfulness brought the Jewish nation into existence and the means for the advent of the Messiah. And understand when I say advent, the coming of the Messiah? And that was a man by the name of Abraham, because Noah's extremely old age. So here was another man who was righteous. And when God told him, hey, I want you to go down here to leave Ur of the Chaldees and go down here to another country, and I'm going to give that to your family. And he says, I'm going to give it to you, but you're not really going to possess it. But your family one of these days will really be happy to have this property. And Abraham was a great man. You can read that story, Genesis chapter 12, verse 29. And it doesn't seem like anybody else. Well, did one man making a big difference? There were others who made a difference, because who does Abraham meet but a man by the name of Melchizedek eventually. Melchizedek, the preacher of righteousness, the king of Salem. And there are a lot of metaphors there, pictures of the Christ incorporated in Melchizedek, so much so that the Hebrew writer includes a whole lot of material there about Melchizedek when he talks about Jesus as being the high priest of the Christian religion. But that's the power of one person in religious history. One man kept God from destroying the nation of Israel, practically before it even got started. And that was Moses. Exodus chapter 32, verse 10, God says, get out of my way. I'm going to destroy all of them. And Moses, I'm going to take you, and I'm going to raise up seed from you and make a new nation. But in verses 31 through 35, Moses pretty much negotiates with God and says, God, don't do that. Yeah, they've sinned. They haven't done what's right, but give them another opportunity. Whether he didn't think he could do it, of course, he didn't think he could lead Israel out of Egyptian bondage, but he talks God out of it, and God kind of accepts that. Because you know what that made him? It's just like with Abraham bargaining for the survival in Sodom and Gomorrah. If they could find 10 righteous people, God wouldn't destroy it. Couldn't find them. But that makes a person like God, to intervene and to advocate for others. One of these days, hopefully, God will give me the opportunity to talk or to preach the difference between judging and advocating. Judging for condemning, judging saying, oh, look, GW, he's done this, and man, he's just lost, he's condemned, we don't want him around. And GW's got caught up in this, how can I help him? That's the type of judging we need to be doing rather than judging. I don't want that person around me. It's how can I help this person become a better person? Now, they may reject all efforts, but how can we help one another to get to heaven? Do you ever look at the words of that song, We're Marching to Zion? You know what that's talking about? One of these days I'll tell you. Lord willing. How'd that be? Think about it. One man's preaching caused the whole city to be convicted of their sins and bring them to repentance, and that was Jonah at Nineveh. Nineveh, the Assyrians were going to destroy the northern kingdom, and God had prevented it a couple times, but he sent Jonah to them. Jonah said, I don't want to go there. He heads the other way. He heads to Spain. Nineveh's this way. He's going to Spain, for as far away as he can get, because he wants Nineveh destroyed. And we know the story of the great sea creature, a whale, if you want to call it a whale, I don't care. But he ends up going because God gets him there, and he goes with a message. And you know what happens? That whole city repents because the king hears it. Oh boy. That must have been some powerful preaching. I'm not that powerful, But again, it's not me. And you realize it wasn't Jonah, was it? It was the Word of God. It was the Word of God that had the power. And that changed the city. But he had to go and he had to preach it. What does Paul say? How can they hear? How can they believe without a preacher? If someone doesn't bring the message. And that's true for everybody in the world. See? That makes our task, your task and my task even greater. One man stood against 85 prophets of Baal and called down fire out of heaven to destroy them and their idol sacrifices. The great prophet Elijah on Mount Carmel, 1 Kings chapter 18. One man. Remember Elijah? Where was he before that? Remember where he was before that event happened? He was way down in the Sinai Peninsula in a cave, saying, "Oh, I'm the only one left, and Jezebel's trying to kill me. Oh, poor me, poor me." And God says, "Get up off your butt. Get up there. I've got, what was it, 7,000 who haven't bowed the knee to Baal in Israel." So don't quote me on the 7,000. Look it up. And he goes back and he fights that fight, and it starts a revolution in Israel, because there are a lot of people who, yes, they trusted in Yahweh, but the king and his wife said, "You better be worshiping Baal." So they could go back and forth, back and forth between the two. And see, that's cemented in their minds. The Lord, Yahweh, is God, not Baal. What a great work that was done. One person. There's also New Testament passages that show the power of one, the importance of one soul. One chapter. Luke chapter 15. 3 parables talk about the importance of one soul, the lost sheep. Hey, there was 99 sheep, right? Only one got lost. Hey, we still got the 99. That one is important. Important enough to leave the 99 in a fold. Yeah, they're protected. They're in the fold. And go find that one. Why? Because the shepherd was responsible for it. Responsible. If he didn't bring back the sheep, he needed to bring back, what was it, an ear and a tail? Something of that nature. To show something got it. But don't come back without the evidence. The lost coin. But you had 10 coins, was it? One was lost. You know what that one was? That was the one to pay the tithes with. It was 10. I don't know that. I don't know that. But think about it. You lose your tithe money? Oh, what do? I've got to dig into my beer money or my cigarette money or whatever. Well, not really, see, but it's a 10. But she found it, and she rejoiced. The prodigal son, yeah, that's a sad story. What do you mean it's a sad story? He came back, yeah, but what happened to his brother? We don't know. There's 2 sons involved, wasn't there? He didn't care about his brother. He didn't care that his brother had returned. He was angry. He didn't want him back. See how that attitude came? But there's one, again, the importance of one soul. You know what the best practice for soul winning is? It's not getting up at big tent meeting or getting on TV or whatever and preaching to thousands or millions. One soul at a time. That's when you can convert them. Truly convert them. Not bring them in under sometimes false pretenses, sometimes they don't understand. Simply working with a person for 6 months, a year, years. That's what happens. That's when you convert people, one at a time. How many of us have one soul picked out that we're trying to convert to Christ? I mean, really trying to convert. Not, oh, boy, I'd like to see my neighbor become a Christian. No. How many have you picked out and that you're actually doing something? Something. Matthew chapter 28, verses 18 through 20 say, go into all the world. And really what that should be saying is, as you are going in the world, teach the gospel to everybody. Teaching them to observe all things that I command you. Baptizing them in the name of Jesus, and then continuing to teach them the thing that you're doing. There's also an admonition not to let one sin prevent your salvation. No, a negative. No, this is still a positive. This is good. This is good right here. Remember that rich young ruler? Good master, what must I do to inherit eternal life? Oh, you got to do some of the 10 Commandments, like, don't kill, don't steal, don't commit adultery. Oh, I've done all those things. And what does Jesus say to him? There's one, what? There's one thing that you still lack. And he went away sorrowful. One thing was keeping him from being saved, and he wasn't going to change. Can you imagine that? Yeah. I don't want to give up my sins either. I want heaven. I'm working on it. Giving it up. Only lack one thing. The one talent man, Matthew chapter 25, verse 14 through 30. One thing, right? He refused to use one talent to secure the great blessing that God wanted to give him. One thing. How many things can keep us out of heaven? It only takes one. That's power, isn't it? That's powerful. Telling us that we've got to be listening. We've got to be, what was that sermon about this morning? Not just seeking, but striving in order to be saved, in order to go to heaven. We have great power within our reach. Solomon wrote in the last part of the text that we read, wisdom is better than weapons of war. You can't fight your way into heaven. You can't take a howitzer or a battleship or a nuclear bomb and bomb your way into heaven. That's not how it works. Wisdom is better than weapons of war, but listen, one sinner destroys much good. One sinner teaching a false message can lead millions away from God. That's why we've got to be so very careful. So, that's a true statement. But the converse is also true. One Christian may turn many to righteousness. But it's got to be, I'm one. And you're one. You're one. Say, because that's how God deals with us. One on one. The lesson is yours. Thank you so very much for your time and your attention and for staying away. Once again, you have need. Please let your request be made known as we stand and sing the invitation song.